Famous movie star Jay Kelly and his devoted manager Ron embark on an unexpectedly profound journey through Europe. Along the way, both men confront the choices they've made, relationships with loved ones, and the legacies they'll leave behind. Jay Kelly is directed by Noah Baumbach and stars George Clooney, Adam Sandler, Laura Dern, and many more. So Jeffrey, what do you think about Jay Kelly?
So Jay Kelly is the new film from Noah Baumbach. It concerns a very rich and very well-known actor named Jay Kelly, who is essentially a stand-in for George Clooney. It's a film that's remarkable in his filmography simply because I think it prioritizes sentiment over acidity. Many of his early films are these scorched earth, like super cynical portrayals of people trying to relate to each other and often failing to. And this movie isn't too far from that in terms of subject matter, but the way in which he's going about it is with far more sentimentality and emotion and more of like almost like a wistful melancholy than this empty feeling of leaving the theater that like, how are these people ever going to relate to each other? Like, this is very much a film that believes that people can change, that people's hearts are in the right place, even if they can't see beyond all of their flaws. It's a far, far less cynical film than a lot of his earlier filmography. He's been working in this register for a little bit, actually, because he was on this path, I think, with Marriage Story, which at the time of that film was his most tender film. Now, I would say that this is probably surpassing that and being his most tender film. Surprisingly, Jay Kelly is so heartfelt at times that it actually borders on being a tad saccharine for me. Its philosophical revelations are always like coated in sugar and like the sadness of pathos, and it has this very like old school Hollywood score that is very conventional and I think callback to like the golden age of Hollywood in a certain way, but in a way that I found like just a touch too schmaltzy, in my opinion. I was really affected by some of Jay Kelly, and I find other parts of it were stretching credibility and stretching, I think, realistic characterization. And as with another film from this year that we'll get to at some point called Sentimental Value, I found myself a lot more interested in the characters than I was like this meta-textual Hollywood aspect, Hall of Mirrors thing that it's doing. I think it made for a fairly confusing film tonally and thematically, although I did enjoy some of it, and it's really not a bad watch. Like, it's a movie that is going to be really easy to watch with your parents around Christmas time, but I'm definitely a little mixed on this one.
Yeah, I would say I'm a little mixed too, probably maybe a little bit more positive than you are. I think there are aspects of this film that just absolutely blew me away. I think this is...
You were blown away at parts by this film?
Yes, definitely.
Oh,
I think this is one of Noah Baumbach's most visually exciting films.
Oh, that's a very good point.
And
yes.
It's very like intricate. There's a lot of set design here. He's doing a lot of really cool things about going into the past that we'll get into, and the way he practically makes these sets to have our main character, played by George Clooney, go from present day into the past. And so I thought a lot of those things were very inspired. We have this beautiful intro sequence to the film, which is kind of like an ode to cinema, like the chaos of all these moving parts. So you have this big scene where everybody's just on their phones or talking to other people, and they're setting up this scene that George Clooney's character is playing a role in, going through this entire set in the backstage of this set just to get to this moment where he wants another take on this scene. And that's the beginning of the film. And for all the Noah Baumbach films I've seen, all those are such character pieces that this is like the first time I think I'm seeing him take not only character, but expand it to other parts and aspects of the filmmaking process. And just like thinking about them a little bit more. How am I going to move this camera around? What cool set can I do here? So I think he's just employing a lot of different techniques that he hasn't used before. And so that makes me kind of excited. But I do agree with you. I think there are parts of the film that maybe just fell a little flat to me thematically. We get to the end of the film, and I'm not going to say anything about that right now, but we get to the end, and part of me just feels like the emotional weight of the film wasn't quite earned, or it just feels a little hollow. So it didn't quite resonate with me on a deep level, but I did enjoy myself.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up, because you're right. This is his most visually accomplished film, I think, by a mile. Like, Noah Baumbach, to me, always felt like a filmmaker who was a writer first and then would just kind of like set up a camera. I know that that's kind of mean. Like, I think there's more to his filmmaking than that, but I think that he's much more interested in having like really good actors that like say the cadence of the dialogue in the way that he wrote it, rather than doing like camera tricks. And I'm not trying to diminish camera or editing tricks in any way, but that just seemed like something he wasn't that interested in as a filmmaker up until this point. And you're right that there is considerably more formula and thought process going into the visual aspects here, as say like compared to something like The Squid and the Whale, or virtually any of his other films, to be honest with you. So that is certainly an interesting aspect of this. I think Clooney's really great in the film. He like gives a performance that's a lot of pathos. He has kind of like a dopiness and a humanity that I think really that's really hinted at throughout the writing, but like is never totally deepened by the writing process. But him as an actor brings something to it that I think deepens it. That's not really in the script. Thinking deeper about his performance, I think that his performance has to sell the humanity of a character that starts with a couple handicaps from an audience perspective. He is really self-absorbed. He's very, very rich. All of his problems seem like they're kind of small town problems in terms of like how well he's doing in his life. And that's kind of a hurdle, I think, as an audience member when you're trying to empathize with a person. But I think the way that Clooney approaches this role, where he's wavering between this melancholy humanity for Jay and also like a slight irony in the tone of which he's portraying himself, which is a really hard thing to balance as an actor. Like he's playing himself in a sense, so there is like a natural charisma to that and an empathetic stature to the role. But it's confrontational enough, I think, in the deviations in the writing that it makes for a multifaceted character. And I'm not sure that this would have totally worked without Clooney in the role.
Yeah, I completely agree. And going directly from him, you made me think of his daughter. She is Daisy and played by Grace Edwards in the film. And this relationship is definitely kind of like the heart of the movie and the heart of his problem, because he's having this realization that, oh, did I go down like a bad path? He is all of a sudden thinking about how little time he spent with her, realizing she's going to be gone. And so since she's going on this last trip to Europe beforehand, he's making this excuse to kind of follow her around. There's a lot of humor that's built into that as well, this chase down, which I thought was really funny. There's like a great line where he finds out where she is based upon her best friend's credit card that they track. When she finds out that her mom was sending him all the credit card information about her location, she's like, "You're worse than Russia." And it was really hilarious. So there's a lot of like little one-liners in this film that are really good. Going from there, should we get into Adam Sandler and Laura Dern? Because they're kind of like a package deal in this movie.
Yeah, sure. There was some hype going into this movie that this would be like this big Oscar performance from Sandler. And I think he's really good in the movie, but I also think that was maybe a touch overstated, at least in my opinion. He's lovely, he's warm, he's like an affectionate rock to Jay throughout the film. And there's a subtlety that Sandler plays the role that I really appreciate, but I'm not sure that it stands up to his best performances. Like if he was nominated for an Oscar for this movie, on one level, I would have to be happy for the guy because it's like routinely known that he's one of the nicest guys in Hollywood. But at the same time, to me, it would feel like a little apologetic that they didn't nominate him for Punch Drunk Love and Uncut Gems. I mean, I do think he's good in the film, but I have seen a lot, I think, more endearing performances from actors this year. But going to like what you were talking about in terms of him and Laura Dern, it's revealed throughout the movie that they have a bit of history with one another. The pairing is really one of the film's highlights in terms of like their past with one another, and also like their past also brings a familiarity in the way that they quip with one another. Like they're able to give these like really acidic jokes back to one another in a way that's amazing that only like Laura Dern can do. I just realized that we're reviewing 2 Laura Dern movies back to back.
Yeah.
That's cool. My only issue with these two characters, and they were like kind of the highlight of the film for me in some way, is I think that they spend a little too much time in Jay's shadow. Their characterizations are often say more about Jay Kelly than they do about themselves.
That's very true. Yeah.
And I know that that's an issue that you have a lot of the time, actually. This is like real deep movie husbands lore, but a lot of times in The Sopranos, you were really bothered by how other characters in The Sopranos were only there to make Tony more interesting.
Yeah.
And I know that's a thing that routinely bothers you. And that's not something that typically bothers me, but it did bother me in this film because it's so much Jay Kelly that I could have used a little bit of levity from other sources.
Yeah, and you do get a little bit more of that from Adam Sandler's character, I would say, than you do Laura Dern's character. Her characterization is just a little bit too thin for me in this movie. It's just her being annoyed, and then, things happen, and I'm not going to spoil anything, but like she's just kind of like annoyed by Jay Kelly this entire time, and she's just quipping with Adam Sandler's character about the whole thing all the time. So, I mean, it's kind of nice because they do have this like really funny dynamic because they both can say things that they can't say directly to Jay Kelly. himself. So they have this kind of unique bond. That being said, with Adam Sandler, I just absolutely love when he steps into these serious roles. I feel like he's at his best.
He's a hell of an actor.
He's a hell of an actor,
Yeah.
especially when he takes on these more serious roles. In this movie, you feel this situation weighing on him. You could see the weight in his eyes. You could see almost like bags building under his eyes, the way that this whole situation is weighing on him. So earlier when I was talking about this production design that I really liked and the practicality of it, there's these really cool scenes in which Baumbach has Jay Kelly going from the present day into the past. There's this big train sequence that they're on the train for a while, and he's walking through these cars and he's walking through this doorway, and then all of a sudden he walks into a completely different set. And this was one of the most, I think, best case uses of this visualization, because I thought it was just wild how he's walking on what's seemingly a moving train into just this other set. It was something I don't really see in film that often, something so practical but so effective in going into what's the word I'm thinking of, going into a flashback.
And if I remember correctly, Jay Kelly, the current older character, is there observing, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it almost gives it like a Christmas Carol type thing where he's watching his own life back.
Yeah.
And you can feel like the melancholy and the wistfulness that he has of reflecting on if he should have done this or he should have done that. Like, was his thinking when he was younger really worth where he ended up in his life? And that's some of the most impactful parts of the film, I think, because they're so understated, actually.
Going from here, I think what I have to say includes spoilers. So if you're good, I think it's good that we move on to all the deeper details of the movie.
Sure. Let's go.
All right. So if you have not seen Jay Kelly, I recommend checking out and then coming back to this review, unless you don't mind being spoiled, because we are going to spoilers. Wee. So the biggest thematic point of this film, and something you were just kind of alluding to, is that Jay Kelly as a character is having regrets about the way he lived his life, and also coming to terms with the concept that he ignored all the people that helped him get to where he is. Because this is having ramifications on Adam Sandler's character. It has big ramifications for Laura Dern's character as she just walks out and leaves and we don't see her ever again. There's scenes with Billy Crudup as a friend that he used to have back in acting school that he stole a role from. So there's some big scenes attached to that. That's kind of where he got his big break, in a way, is off this guy who he kind of just forgot about and is just living a normal life. What is he, a dentist or something now? He's something.
Oh, yeah. He might be a dentist. But it's something along the lines of being a dentist.
Yeah.
Jay Kelly definitely has like bad dad energy. RIP to my dad and everything. But there is a certain father out there that when they get older, they start getting a little teary-eyed, and they're like, oh, now that I wasn't around ever at all, I'd like to be around all the time now. Because I screwed that up before, and I'm just like, whoa, okay, you're just turning this on right now?
Oh, very true, yeah.
Yeah, and Jay Kelly definitely has that energy. He almost wants the reconciliation without doing the work. And I do have to admire how it doesn't shy away from it exactly. I wouldn't say it focuses on it, but it doesn't go out of its way to exonerate Jay, even if it wants you to sympathize with him, which is an interesting balance.
Yeah, I completely agree. There's a scene a bit earlier in the film, maybe halfway through. I'm trying to remember when it is, but Jim Broadbent plays a character in the film that's kind of like an old director of his that they worked on a movie together. So they're kind of friends.
Oh, this is a nice scene, actually. The one in the kitchen?
Yes.
Yeah.
The kitchen. Well, it's nice, and it's also kind of sad.
It is sad, yeah.
So he plays a character called Peter Schneider, and he comes in with an idea. He wants Jay Kelly to attach his name to this film so that way he could get funding for it. Jay Kelly refuses to do this for his friend, and then he passes away. So it's really sad because he's left disappointed, and then Jay Kelly has to deal with the fact that he literally rejected this guy just before he died.
Yeah, and basically didn't give him the chance to make his final project or whatever it would have been. This is what starts his crisis, because this actually starts the film, right? So then they go to his funeral, and that's what kind of starts the whole reflection part of Jay Kelly's whole existential crisis.
Yeah. It actually reminded me, I saw an interview with Emma Watson, and she was talking about filming with people and how with Harry Potter, she grew this expectation of going onto sets and becoming friends with everybody. She was there to make friends and become a family. And she realized after going into all these big budget movies after Harry Potter, how little people care about each other. That whole scene with Jim Broadbent and George Clooney, maybe think of that because here's a relationship that you think they're friends. You think they have grown some kind of connection with each other. He really doesn't really respect this person enough to give him his name, or he just doesn't think he's good enough. I don't know what it is. But
yeah, or he's just too selfish.
Yeah.
And you kind of get the impression that at one point, they were like a De Niro and a Scorsese kind of thing. Like they were a pair up that you would expect and would help one another. And that isn't so true anymore. Gosh, I love Jim Broadbent.
Yes, he's so good.
I know. I love him so much. It made me think of Mike Leib movies that he was in. I just love Jim Broadbent.
Oh, and then there's the connection with Harry Potter, which I just didn't even think about because he plays Professor Slughorn.
Yeah. He's not a great actress in that movie. Anyway, way off topic. But anyway, I want to go into some of the stuff with the oldest daughter. I think that she actually has some of the most interesting parts of the movie. She has this absolutely cutting line where she says to Jay Kelly, and she's like the heart of the movie in some ways to me. She's like the part of the movie I wanted to hear a little more from. Maybe that's just because like I have a predilection for dark subject matter, but I found the film a little hard to reconcile with balancing this character and also balancing like it's seemingly boundless empathy for Jay. She has this really cutting line at some point, and she was like, "Dad, do you know how I know you didn't want to be there for me? Because you weren't there for me." Yeah. And I was like, damn. I was like, that's a good line. And then not only that, but they have a scene later, this really like impressionistic and interesting scene where he calls her from the woods. And it's another interesting transition that kind of like you were talking about before, where he's on the phone, and they apparently did this live. I found out. Oh, I think we found out in the Q&A. He's on the phone, and he's walking through the trees, and on the phone, he's talking to his daughter, and his daughter just comes from behind one of the trees and starts talking to him.
Yeah,
and obviously, it's mimicking the conversation that they're having, that she's on the other end of the phone, but she's live in the scene.
Yeah,
which is a really interesting bit. But I think that in that scene, it's so easy to read Jay's need for forgiveness as a selfish endeavor. I'm not sure he wants to do the work, and I'm not sure that he really wants to actually seek amends as much as he just wants to exonerate himself with guilt. And although he's like really easy to empathize with in a lot of scenes, he's not easy to empathize with in like the therapy scene earlier in the film. I think it's to the film's credit that it explores that relationship at all, but at the same time, I do find that really hard to reconcile with the rest of the film. The tone here is really muddled because I think it wants us to sympathize with Jay. It also wants us to have this Hall of Mirrors metafictional aspect that it wants us to lean into George Clooney's career for a lot of the sympathy that we're going to have for the Jay Kelly character. So I feel like there's a bit of a like have your cake and eat it too here, where it's like seriousness and irony, like forgiveness and confrontation and all of these things all muddled together, that I just didn't feel like it was on a perfectly executed path to make me feel a certain way. It felt too confused.
I completely agree. I wanted to see more of this eldest daughter because, I don't know, I really related to her. In this conversation that they have in the woods, you can tell that she's been left behind for so long, but she's also done the work to reconcile that within herself. She's not getting overly emotional about the situation. She's just kind of like, oh, there you are, recognizing something that I had to deal with for so many years of my life. And
it reminds me so much of talking to a parent, because I just want to shake Jay and just be like, you're not listening to her. You're not listening.
That's when I said earlier that the emotional weight was kind of lost on me in the film, is because I think it introduced a lot of these little side things, but it doesn't give any particular one enough attention to make me feel strongly enough. The strongest I probably felt was the relationship between Jay Kelly and Ron in the film. That was probably because that was like the biggest focus of the film for me, is just that their relationship, how Ron is kind of being abused in this role, or just not really abused, but just forgotten. Like he's not being appreciated for all the work that he's put in into making this man's career happen. That's the big story of the movie, is him learning to have an appreciation for this guy.
For sure. And that's Jay Kelly's arc. I think Adam Sandler's arc is interesting because he stands up to Jay Kelly at a certain point and he chooses to leave.
Yeah.
And I was like celebrating him leaving because I feel like that's character growth. And then he decides to stay. He has one final talk with Jay, and then he decides to stay. And to some degree, I feel like we're right back where we started. We're big fans of ambiguity, right? I found that particular part of the film more unclear than I found ambiguous. I wasn't sure if I was supposed to feel like Adam Sandler's character had failed and was just going right back to where he was before. If their relationship is new now, there's a new like reconciliation in the way that they're looking at one another. I don't think the film is clear about that. And if it was ambiguous by counterpoint, I think it would be considering all of those different perspectives in that scene, which I don't think it's doing. Talking about that scene with the eldest daughter when they're on the phone, there's like probably less than 10 minutes between that scene and the final scene, which is a scene that is like reverse engineered to try to make you cry and did not work on me, I have to say. But again, really leaning on George Clooney's career to make you really feel something. And I think not exonerate Jay Kelly, but show you why he was so attached to his work.
Yeah.
I found that more emotionally manipulative than I did complicating, if that makes sense.
No, I completely agree. I think when you were talking about ambiguity just now, it reminded me of what we just talked about in It Was Just an Accident review. The ambiguity worked so well in that film because you had so many little clues or details that you could parse through and pick out. And in this film, the dialogue doesn't really do much to give you anything to think about. So you're kind of just left with this ambiguity that lacks depth.
Yeah, and what's interesting too is we saw this movie within 24 hours of sentimental value, which, spoiler alert, we're both a little colder on sentimental value than the rest of the world.
Oh gosh, that is a spoiler.
But I will say that movie is considerably more ambiguous, and I think ambiguous like to its core, like in the writing, than this film is. There's just like a lot that I wish that I could really dig into and parse through that I don't think the film is just giving me enough to do that.
Yeah, I agree. And when we get down to this final scene that takes place in the theater where he's being recognized for all of his achievements in life, we see him look around at all the people that kind of helped him get there that are in the audience. And so I do think this is growth. This is him reflecting and realizing that, yes, I need to appreciate these people more. But the way that he's staring at himself on the screen, there's a little bit of egotism still attached there. There's a little bit of maybe narcissism. I don't know. It's very interesting that I can't really parse through this moment, and I don't have many details to really make a solid opinion out of.
Yeah, something about the way he I think the line is at the end, he's like, I wish I could go again, or I want to go again.
No, he wants to do another take. That's like the biggest thing, because at the beginning, he wants to do more takes to get it right.
Yeah.
And so now, I guess that is a big clue. That's the biggest clue we get, is that if he wants to do another take, but is it that he wants to do it all over again so he could do it the same way? Because he realizes how much he saw of himself in the footage that was playing?
Well, that's the thing. Is he watching the footage and saying, gosh, this is all worth it. I wish I could do it again.
Yes.
Or is he saying, God, I fucked all this up?
Yes.
I don't know.
But
it's like, I don't know in the bad way, not in the good way.
Yes.
Especially like Nicholas Britell's score is like soaring right now. It's going insane with the trying to make you cry isms with the swelling and everything. That I'm just like, wait, what? What am I supposed to feel? And it was a distinct moment that I felt so disconnected from what was on screen, because it was like all of the filmmaking aspects was communicating to me that I should feel a certain way. And I'm like, no, that's strange. I know I said this already, but I want to be clear, because like I could see the hypocrisy like coming in the comments, is like lack of clarity is a problem. Ambiguity is not a problem. They are very, very different things. And I feel like when your mind is taking you in one direction and the film is communicating to you that you should feel XYZ and you don't feel those things, that's a problem.
That's so weird. It's like if I saw like a bunch of like footage of myself in front of me, like on a screen,
I would like leave.
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to sit through that. And
I could barely watch these reviews.
And just the way like everybody's like standing in a theater, like talking about you and just like celebrating you. I don't know. I would find that so bizarre. So I don't know why. Like in this case, like he's taken by this, unless he is a egotistical maniac. I don't know.
I just remembered there's a really good joke in this movie where they say that some guy has infinite COVID. Funny. Yes. That was really funny. That was a good part.
There was some really funny moments.
And also his dad, his completely politically incorrect dad, who just like says horrible stuff all the time.
Oh
that guy was really funny.
Yeah, I forgot all about that.
We're getting to the positive at like minute 55 of this review.
No, there was a lot of positives to this movie, but I agree in the end it just didn't come together.
Yeah, we didn't mention at all Billy Crudup, who almost steals the damn movie. He's in it for like 15 minutes, and he has an extraordinary scene in the movie where he basically like sends up Jay Kelly on like an acting treatise of a lifetime.
I'm wondering, I was just sitting here thinking about the ending. I'm wondering if I'm just being like a little bit of a Debbie Downer. Like I'm wondering if I just like, oh, it is nice. Like he did recognize something and he is changing.
I don't know. I want to watch it with my mom and see what she thinks. Nothing about my mom in particular, but it's just like she's like the barometer of like normal movie isms and how you're supposed to feel.
Yeah.
And maybe we're just too up in the air about, highfalutin film stuff to tap into this. I'm not sure.
Know. Maybe I'm just being too harsh. I don't know.
The reaction to this movie is mixed, I would say. Some people do really like it.
I haven't looked at any of the reviews.
Yeah, some people do really like it, and other people are a little less warm.
Okay. I try to avoid what other people say about a film until we've reviewed it.
I write all my notes, and then I read reviews.
Okay.
So that it's hopefully not affecting. But you ready to go to grades?
I am ready to go grades. I've given the film a B. This is just the average of the things I liked and didn't like about the movie. But I wish there was a little bit more depth in these characterizations and depth in the screenplay itself to bring out a little bit more of that emotional weight or more of the effects that these decisions that he's made in his life have on not only himself, but the people around him. It just seems like this whole movie is just all these people being annoyed that he hasn't given them their due or he doesn't appreciate them. But that's as far as I think we get. It's deeper than that. It can go deeper than that. So I wish it went deeper than that.
Yeah, I give it a B-. I would say it's a soft recommend. I'd say it's worth seeing. It's probably worth watching with your parents. I think they'll like it. It's too long. I wouldn't mention this, but this movie's like 2 hours and 20 minutes long.
It was too long.
Way too long. It's a rare occasion, especially because Baumbach is such a talented writer that the actors actually elevate the material a little bit. Whereas, like, I don't love the script here, but I think Clooney does elevate the role of Jay Kelly to something that the script didn't necessarily have in it. I'm just a little disappointed in the themes here because there's a lot of stuff that I really love. Like, I love the old guy reflecting on the life not lived and did I really do these things correctly? And that's all stuff that I live for that in film. And I just didn't feel like this really pierced skin enough.
That's been done a lot in films.
It has. Yeah, no, it has.
We're not approaching anything new with this film.
No, and that's okay. But if you're going to do that, then I feel like you have to do it in a way that's piercing skin. Something that I'm going to walk away from and just be like, okay, wow, that was something interesting and compelling. And I did not feel that here.
All right, and that's it for our review of Jay Kelly. Jay Kelly is now in theaters, so if you haven't seen it, go check it out. Let us know in the comments, what did you think about this film? As always, thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time.